Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Xiaoling and welcome to my Ghost Recon Wildlands skill point guide for beginners. I say beginners because this is aimed obviously at people who haven't played the game that much or people who are relatively new to the Ghost Recon Wildlands experience. And the one thing I can say is when I started the game, there were so many skills to choose from and I didn't know what skills were useful and what skills I should prioritize over other skills, because I can say now, after playing the game a fair amount and hitting the max level, that there are definitely some skills that are more useful than other skills and some skills that you probably don't even need to worry about at all. And especially since when you start the game, you have a very limited amount of skill points as well as very limited resources to spend on skill points. So I think without further ado, let's get started. So first up, we have weapons. Stable aim adds stability while using a sniper rifle. You can see here I've maxed this out, 65% movement reduction. Obviously when you start you aren't going to be able to max it out, but this is one of the skills you should put points in right off the bat, because you are going to be spending a fair amount of time using a sniper rifle, sniping enemies in sniper towers or sniping generators and things like that. Now, I know not everyone wants to play as a sniper, but inevitably you are going to be using a sniper rifle at some point in the game. So I would say this is the first skill that you should probably be focusing on. Hip fire spread reduces the bullet spray when firing weapons without aiming. This is not particularly useful because the majority of the game you're probably going to be aiming down sights. So I would highly recommend that you do not put points into this until you've put points into more useful skills in this particular tree. Grenade launcher, I'm very much a stealth player. I've got 1 point in it so that I actually have a grenade launcher. All adding points to this does is give you more grenades. So yeah, I don't, unless you like to go in loud with guns blazing, this is probably not a skill that you want to be focusing on. Moving over to ammo capacity, you can see this increases the maximum amount of ammunition capacity for all of your weapons. I initially put 1 point in here, I've put 2 points in here now. This is only really toward the end of the game. The reason I say that this is not as useful as some of the other skills is because throughout the game you are going to find ammo crates. And there are often more than one in any given location. So really running out of ammo is not something that you really have to worry about. You know, if the game had on difficult mode far less of these around, maybe taking ammo capacity would have been more useful. The only time that I found that this comes into play is if you get into large gunfights. You know, there are a lot of reinforcements and you have to take out a lot of guys. But even then, that's only if you can't actually get to an ammo crate, which is usually just around the corner. So I would say that this skill is not that useful. Moving on to vehicle destruction, this increases the damage that you can do to enemy vehicles. This is very, very important, especially later in the game, because you are going to get Unidad helicopters, or you're going to get helicopter reinforcements that are all going to come and get you, or even enemy reinforcements that are going to come in their vehicles full of enemies trying to kill you. When you've maxed this out, you can see I've also got the medal for it, which gives me an additional 20% of damage. And you can one-shot basically any helicopters or any vehicles in the game if you have an HTI sniper rifle. So this is very, very useful toward the end of the game. Moving on to advanced suppressors, removes the damage reduction of suppressors. Now, what I want to say about this skill is it removes the damage, but it also reduces penetration. So when you're using a sniper rifle that usually one-shots enemies and you put a suppressor on it, even though it does the same amount of damage, it has less penetration and therefore will not do as much damage to those vehicles because it can't get through the armor. This is something to keep in mind. When I first took the skill, I thought my sniper rifles would be able to one-shot stuff, but you do need to take the penetration stat into account. Moving on to time to aim, reduces the time to aim weapons with large scopes. Now, this is not particularly useful because usually when you're sniping, you aren't having to quick scope anything. You know, you have the time to aim and look at your different targets. So this is really something that you don't need to focus on. Moving on to time to aim, this reduces the time to aim weapons with large scopes. This is not particularly useful because it's not really that important to be able to aim down your scope really, really quickly. Normally, when you are aiming down large scopes with a sniper rifle, you have time on your hands. It's not something that you have to do in a hurry. And ammo retention, respawning refills your ammunition. This is not particularly helpful. The reason I have points in time to aim and ammo retention is because I wanted to unlock ranged elite, which increases the weapon accuracy at long range by 30%. You don't actually have to buy the skill. As soon as you have 1 point in all the other skills, the skill unlocks and is a passive bonus that you're going to get. Moving on to the drone tree, you can see we have a number of trees here. Some of these skills are more useful depending on the settings you have in the game, and others are just not useful at all. Starting with battery life, 2 points in battery life I think is adequate. especially for the first portion of the game, because even with the larger bases in the game, having 2 battery life will last you long enough to be able to almost map out the entire thing. So having more points in here is not really a priority. Night vision is self-explanatory, so during the night you can switch to night vision with your drone, which is pretty useful. I would recommend taking this as well. And moving on to range, I've got 3 points in range, which allows, again, me to explore the majority of bases in the game almost fully without getting out of range. So this is something quite handy to take as well. Speed is not very important. Again, I don't think that the drone needs to move any faster. Again, the reason why I have 1 point in all of these skills is because I wanted to unlock the medic epic skill for the drone. The elite skill, sorry, not the epic skill. Marking area, this can be pretty helpful if you don't want to spend time marking all your enemies, so it'll mark them much faster, which can be useful. If you're planning on playing on extreme difficulty with no markers in the game, you don't really need to bother about putting points into this, honestly. Stealth makes your drones a little bit quieter, so you can get closer to people if you want to. Again, I've got 1 point in here because I wanted to unlock that. The cooldown I don't really think is necessary. The wait is not really that long. And the cooldown timer of the drone is based on how long the drone has been out. Noisemaker can be pretty helpful. It allows the drone to emit a noise to attract enemies who are close to it. And each point you put in here increases the effective range. You can see it's currently on 30 meters and it increases to 40 and 50 respectively, depending on how many points you have in it. Sometimes it's good to have a small radius because you only want to attract a specific guard, to a specific location. So this is going to depend on your playstyles. The larger this radius is going to get, the more people it's going to attract, which is not always what you want. And I think it would have been nice if you had upgraded this to be given the option to choose what you want the range of the Noisemaker to be, when you equip the drone. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Zoom, self-explanatory, you can zoom in. Explosive drones, again, if you're going in loud and you want to go in and blow people up, this is pretty handy. I've only got 1 point in explosive, EMP, and armor. Armor is the least useful of all the drone skills because, honestly, no one ever shoots your drone. Maybe once in my 60 hours of playing the game has someone actually shot my drone. So this is the least useful skill. And again, I only have 1 point in here so that I could get the medic skill. Thermal vision can be quite handy with a drone, but the thermal vision with drones is not quite as useful as having it for your main character. Moving on to items, parachute, yes, obviously self-explanatory, allows you to get out of sticky situations if your helicopters have been hit by SAM missiles, allows you to jump out. Binocular zoom, pretty self-explanatory as well. I don't really use binoculars that much. I have put a point into the zoom here, especially for the moments where you've got drone jammers and you can't get in, then binocular zoom is quite useful. So moving on to mines, you start with 2 mines. Having extra points in here just gives you more mines. I think having 1 point in here is absolutely enough. 3 mines is plenty. The only time you're ever going to really use mines is you can be taking out convoys or on the missions where you are going to defend radio stations. The thing with taking out convoys with mines is a bit problematic because convoys are usually on roads that are traversed by other civilian vehicles as well, and the civilian vehicles usually end up detonating your mines. So it's usually a better idea to use C4 in those situations. So the only time I really use mines are for those radio defense missions. So I don't think there's a priority in that. And on those radio defense missions, you can just put down your 3 mines, go and refill at a weapon supply crate, which is literally right next to the radio station, and then just keep putting them down. So there's no reason that you need to take any more than 1 point in this. And again, you want 1 point in here so that you can unlock your elite skill. Diversion lures allows you to throw a grenade that distracts an enemy, so they'll go and investigate it. I've hardly actually used this at all. This is obviously more prevalent for stealth playthroughs, but I again have not found the need to distract guards because for the most part killing them outright and sneaking up behind them is relatively easy anyway. Frag grenades, obviously self-explanatory. The amount of points you put in any of these item skills determines how many of that item you're going to have. Pretty handy sometimes for those tight situations. C4, again, like the mines, you get 3 if you have 1 point in here, and I think 3 is enough even for some of the story missions. Binocular recon increases the ability of your binoculars to identify targets. Again, as I said earlier with the drones, because you use the drones most of the time, you aren't going to use your binoculars that much, so I don't really have that many points in here. Thermal vision, I would say, is a must-have. You want to get this as soon as you can because it's very handy. Sometimes night vision is not going to be enough to give you a clear enough image of where your enemy is for sniping and whatnot. Flashbangs, you can see I've got 2 points in here as well. I think flashbangs are relatively useful, although I don't really use them as much as I would like. And flare guns, well, as you can see, I've got 1 point in here again just to unlock the skill. Flare guns are not that useful. I've hardly used them. If you do drop them in an area, all the guards in an outpost will sort of head toward that part, and then you can nuke them all with a mortar. But I've not really used it that much. Moving on to physical. Stamina obviously is the length of time you can run without running out. This I only actually upgraded to max recently, just because I didn't want to have to slow down and be tired and wait for it to regenerate. Otherwise, like 1 or 2 points in here I think is pretty decent. No pain. If you're playing on harder difficulties, this is probably going to be more important, because when your AI or your teammates raise you and people are shooting at you, this increases the window in which you will have a lot of damage resistance, allowing you to get behind cover and not immediately die again. Because normally when you get raised, you stand up and then there's a second or two where you aren't actually able to move. So this is relatively important, again, especially on high difficulty. Car shield increases the amount of damage that cars can take before getting destroyed. Pretty self-explanatory. So I think of all the skills here, quiet running and detection are probably the most important ones, especially if you're trying to play stealthily. Allows you to run very quietly behind people before they can even spot you. You can literally sprint up behind someone and get them with this max. And then you have bullet resistance. This is also very important if you are going to be playing on extreme difficulty. It reduces the amount of bad damage you take from bullets. So you can see I have a 20% damage reduction. On easier modes, this isn't going to be less important, so you probably need to focus much less on this. And then, of course, detection makes it harder for enemies to detect you when you are crouched or prone. This is handy as well. It allows you to actually get closer to enemies while crouched without getting seen. And it allows your prone to become much more effective when enemies start spotting you. You can just quickly lie down and then they'll like, oh, I don't know where he is. Explosion resistance, I don't really think this is so useful. More often than not, you probably don't want to be standing next to explosions. And there aren't that many cases where you are standing next to explosions that it warrants having to pick this up. Aircraft shield reduces the amount of damage aircrafts take, planes and helicopters. Again, I don't really think that this is this useful. It's very seldom that you're going to find yourself going head on head with vehicles with miniguns and stuff when you're trying to fly a helicopter. It's not practical. So I found these two skills far less useful. And again, I have 1 skill point in each of these so that I could unlock the faster health regeneration to recover from damage much faster. Again, this is probably something that's more useful in extreme difficulty mode, which is what I'm playing on. And then moving on to squad, we've got revive speed, which increases the speed of your teammate revival. I wouldn't worry about maxing this out. Again, I've got 2 points in here, but once you unlock the medic drone under the drones over here, then revival is going to be far less important, because you can just send your medic drone into revive an AoE area. So I wouldn't focus too many points in here. Even on extreme, I don't really think it's necessary. Extra sync shot. Now this is only applicable for single player. So you want to get these, if you are playing single player, you want to get both of these as soon as possible, so that you can max out your sync shots with your AI. So if you're playing single player, get this as soon as you can. Trained rebels, this improves the effectiveness of the freed rebel fighters. Those are the guys that are locked in cages that you let them out. This will increase the effectiveness. Honestly, I don't think they're particularly useful, and I wouldn't bother putting too many points in this. You can see I don't even have any points in here at the moment. I will eventually get 1 point in all of these so that I can get the last chance epic skill over here. Squad resilience. Increases their resistance by 5%. Even on extreme, these guys hardly die. And if they do die, they end up raising each other, or you can raise them with your medic drone. So honestly, I wouldn't really waste any points in the skill. As you can see, I've got the least points in the skill tree than I have in any of the others. Bleed out time increases the time you have before dying while waiting to be revived. Now, this is only important again in single player, because in multiplayer, once the timer runs out, you can just respawn on one of your teammates. So that makes no difference whatsoever. However, if you're playing extreme mode and in single player, if your time runs out, then your game is over. I'm not sure if it's a bug with multiplayer that when the time runs out, you can just respawn. I think on extreme mode, it should be that when the time runs out, you die and you have to retry, because otherwise it just makes the game way too easy. But again, if you are going to take bleed out time, this is only applicable in single player. And then again, I would say it's only applicable if you are playing on extreme difficulty. And even then, it's debatable whether you should take this particular skill. It's not very useful at all. Born leader, AI teammates become effective killers. Well, I don't really think this is very useful either, because if you sync shot people, your guys are very good at taking people out. Even before I've got any points in here, even on extreme difficulty, I've had no issues with my AI being able to take out enemies when defending radio stations or things like that. So I haven't even bothered putting any points in here. And finally, you'll notice that next to each of these skills, there's a little star icon. These are medals. If you mouse over them, you can see where exactly to find the medal and also what benefit it gives you. Each of these medals will directly add to the bonus of that particular skill. So for example, ammo capacity is going to add, in this case, 25% more ammo in addition to the benefits you get from putting points into this. So you can also actively decide to go to the different zones and pick up these medals as well. So that's been a look at the skills of Ghost Recon Wildlands. Hope you guys find the video helpful for those of you at least who are new to the game. If you have any questions or comments about any of this stuff, you can let me know in the comment section below and I'll be happy to and do my best at least to answer the questions if you guys have any of those. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, subscribe, just like, all the usual stuff. I've been Charling and I'll see you guys next time.